Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. A Players' Day off out in Berea. But for Andrew Berry, front office, still continuing to work, trying to get things right. The Browns today signed a defensive tackle, Tyler Davidson, to the practice squad, an eye on the 53-man roster. 7-year veteran of the NFL. A run-stuffing defensive tackle, has played in 105 games with the Saints and most recently with the Falcons. In Atlanta, his job was to keep Deion Jones clean. That is the guy that the Browns traded for on Sunday. Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Mary Kay, run defense has not been good the last couple of games. Do these two guys kind of go at least part of the way of helping fix that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they had to do something. You know, they could not stand pat. They've given up 440 yards rushing in the last 2 weeks alone. You saw what Austin Eckler was able to do to them after he had only 140 yards rushing all season in his previous 4 games heading in. That was the worst rush offense in the NFL that bowled over the Cleveland Browns like that. So they've got to tighten it up. And the guys that are existing on the team, you know, they really need to dig deep and find a way to stop the run themselves. It's just got to be a joint effort.
When you look at this defense, and Kevin Stefanski was asked this almost ad nauseum yesterday, how do you fix it? It's not one thing. So what do you do if you're Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods and that defensive crew?
Well, you know, as you've seen, you know, they added these 2 guys, and if Deion Jones is able to play, you know, I think he will help shore up the run defense right away. I think they need some veteran players. I think they recognize that they're very young, and, you know, they need some guys that have been around a little bit, and, you know, and kind of help get guys lined up and in the right spots and not missing their gaps and their fits and those kinds of things. So I think that should help. I think they really miss Anthony Walker Jr. You know, Jacob has been calling the plays, but, you know, maybe there is a concern there. I'm not really sure yet if that's been part of the problem, but I think it's a little bit of everything. I think it's Joe Woods taking a look at the scheme and seeing what they're doing from a defensive scheme standpoint. I think it's Kevin Stefanski getting a little bit more involved. I think it's some personnel changes, and I think it's each one of those players digging deep and finding something within themselves that maybe they didn't know they had.
Does the trade and the signing kind of so close together, does that kind of send a message that there's a sense of urgency that, you know, this isn't something there isn't a bye coming up, there isn't anything that you got to fix it, and you got to fix it pretty much now?
Yeah, they've got to fix it now because, as you know, the Patriots are coming to town, and they just rushed for 176 yards on the Detroit Lions in their 29-0 shutout. So you know exactly what Bill Belichick is going to do. He knows how to find the weaknesses in a defense, and he's looking at those holes right now. He's looking to see who to run at, which side to run on, and finding all the tendencies there that he needs to put into place for Sunday. So they don't have any time. They don't have any time, and they actually have to break it down almost like it is a bye week. And look at every single one of these plays, find out where the problems are, who the problem players are, and then what they can do about it.
Do you think we could see some personnel shakeups as well, or just scheme shakeups? Is it at that point where you think they're going to alter what they're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they have to shake it up. There could be some personnel changes. You know, we know that the new guys will roll in there. I think it'll help that Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney will both be another week removed from their injuries. Same thing with Taven Bryan. You had 3 starting defensive linemen who missed the Falcons game. That did not help matters. I still maintain the Browns would have won that game had those 3 guys been in there. And then when they came back this past weekend, they were not 100%, probably not even close to being 100%. So I think as those guys get a little bit healthier, that will help a lot.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one just about where the Browns sit.
Hey, everyone. Maybe Andrew Berry could suggest this. What if head coach Stefanski were to give up his offensive control, handing it over to Coach Van Pelt for the time being, and spending the majority of his time and effort on the defensive side of the ball, assisting Coach Woods by working with the defensive players with a hands-on approach? Coach Van Pelt had a great game versus Pittsburgh 2 years ago in the playoff game, so you can trust Van Pelt. Joe Woods needs all the help he can get, and the players need to know the head coach is invested in them too, not just the offense. A new set of eyes on the defense might be beneficial. We know Stefanski can call a great offensive game, a la the fifth best fishing offense in the league. What about the defense? Kevin, putting forth time and effort in the weak link of this team could be worth it. As the team's leader, time to fix the 30th ranked defense in efficiency that's costing us games. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I'll let you respond to that first, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
Okay, so I do have a lot of thoughts on this, actually. First of all, I don't think Kevin Stefanski needs to give up play calling to assist with the defense. This is something as simple as, in my opinion, I'm going to venture to say that if Deshaun Watson had been their quarterback for these first 5 games, that they would probably be 4-1 or something like that. In each one of these games, Jacoby Brissett, although he has played very well in certain situations, and he's extended plays and he's done a nice job with his legs, and he's actually maybe exceeded expectations in some cases, he's thrown an interception in each one of these losses at the end of the game in sort of a 2-minute drill when you're trying to go down there and win the game with a field goal or tie the game with a field goal. And that can't happen. Let's think about this for a minute. The Chargers gave up 213 yards rushing, and they won the game. And they're not talking about 213 yards rushing given up by their defense today. They're not talking about that. And last year, when the Browns rushed for 230 yards on them, they won the game 47-42, and they probably weren't talking about their run defense then either. There are other ways to win the game. So I think this is a combined effort of a lot of things. And one of those things is, being able to close out the game at the end in the 2-minute drill and to make the kicks. And Cade York's got to step up and make the kicks.
Yeah, I would agree. Kevin Stefanski, by and large, play calling is one of the things people are always going to point to. I think his play calling's been fine. The other thing, it seems to me a lot of guys on defense are trying to make a big play instead of making the play that is needed. In other words, I think that's where some of the assignment things are going. Guys are they're trying to make the big play, and you can't always do that.
Yeah, I don't really know if it's that as much as it is, these guys are committing to the run and really just saying, we don't care. We're just going to run all over you. And obviously they have identified some weaknesses, and, it could be at every level of the defense. Now, Myles Garrett did take blame for the defensive line not doing its job well enough in this past game. And if Myles is willing to step up and say that, then, I'm going to believe him on that had a lot to do with it. But it's every level of the defense. They all have to pitch in, the linebackers, and now, of course, there will be, a new linebacker in there. But, if they have to find other guys that can stop the run, that are already on this football team, then give them a chance or rotate them in a little bit more. Again, I think it's a collective effort, and, they just have to dig deep and maybe just want to make that tackle a little bit more.
Fair enough. All right. This is from More For You, Cleveland, and it's kind of interesting. Martin Emerson has played really well. The rookie, highest graded defensive player in the backfield, and he's 16th among all cornerbacks across the NFL. Martin Emerson Jr. and Mary Kay, 3rd-round pick. A lot of people scratched their heads when the Browns took a cornerback. He's looked pretty good, and he's pretty physical.
Yeah, he's very physical, and he's big, And look, he was not intimidated. That moment was not too big for him. I asked him about that on the press conference yesterday. That moment was not too big when Brandon Staley said, we are going for it on 4th and 1, and we are going to attack the rookie with our Pro Bowl receiver, Mike Williams, and we feel really good about that matchup. And what happened? MJ broke up that pass. That was a huge play by him. That was terrific. He's not intimidated by anything. Yesterday, he just kept on saying, that's what I'm here for. That's what my job is. That's what I do. And I've been making plays like this all of my life. So he's got a great attitude. He knows how to shake things off. He is aggressive. You've seen him as a gunner and, making plays that way. I just think they really found a gem in the 3rd round in MJ Emerson.
Agree with you wholeheartedly. Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll look at some of the rankings for the offense and defense, plus head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason with a question about an addition. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Long-time listener. Big fan. Rough game yesterday. Not going to sit here and pass the blame on the coaches or the players this game. Just have a quick question. So the Browns go out after that loss and trade for Deion Jones, I believe, from the Falcons, a linebacker. So why are they not looking for a defensive tackle? Because that's where we're getting gashed in the holes. And I feel like the linebacker help, yeah, that's great, but we need defensive tackle. We need defensive line help. When Garrett and Clowney come off the field, it's horrible. Winfrey looks good in flashes, but we need something more consistent. So instead of the linebacker, why wouldn't they go look for a defensive tackle? Just my question and thoughts. I'd like to hear your guys' opinion and see what you have to say. Go Browns. Woof, woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, they were looking for a defensive tackle. They may be looking for more defensive tackles. To the point, yeah, they definitely need more help in the interior.
Yeah, they definitely do. Again, I do think that it will help when Taven Bryan is feeling a lot better, one of their starters. And, they're just going to have to do some other things schematically, I think. But they should definitely keep looking around for other linebackers, other defensive tackles. They left themselves a little bit short. They're finding that out now. And teams are just going to keep cramming it down their throat until they prove they can stop it. So, I'm sure Andrew Berry is trying out other guys. I'm sure he's looking around on other rosters to see if there are other trades he can make. And they'll do what they have to do to try to get this fixed.
All right. This is kind of interesting as well. So through 5 weeks, Pro Football Focus grades, Browns offense is number 1 graded offense in the NFL through 5 weeks. Defense is 28th. That's a huge I'm surprised kind of by both of those. The offense has been that good, but I thought this defense was going to be better. Is there still time for them to turn it around? If you remember last year, they started off not so great and got it rolling. A lot of those guys are back, though. That's the head scratcher about it.
Yeah, they'll turn it around. They will get better. And they will figure it out, although they have to do it against some of the best offenses in the NFL and some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, you're going to have to do it against Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson and Tom Brady. So it's certainly not going to get any easier. But for the Browns offense to be considered the top offense in the NFL right now, I don't know. That just, I'm just not feeling that. I mean, I just don't know how, how you can say that. Obviously, they're running the ball extremely, extremely well, and they're doing some other things really well. But I just don't think that, it just doesn't pass the test for me to consider it the number one offense in the NFL.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You've got the Chiefs that are going crazy. You got the Bills. There are a lot of really good, high-powered offenses. All right, most yards from scrimmage, and this combines passing and rushing. Saquon Barkley, number 1 overall. Nick Chubb, predominantly on the ground, number 2 overall, ahead of Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill. That kind of is a jarring perspective of just how well Nick Chubb is playing relative to the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, is it 3 or 4 100-yard games that he has? But he's just doing a tremendous job. They're running him like crazy. They're relying on him, and he's coming through. He's answering the bell, and they're keeping him fresh with Kareem Hunt. So that's not surprising that he's at the top of all these lists. And who knows? I mean, hopefully for him, he can actually challenge for the rushing title this year. Would really be nice if he could get that. But certainly that's been a highlight of the season so far. Yeah,
without question. He's kind of on a pace to get close to 2,000 yards, which think about that. That hadn't been done very often. All right, Week 5 NFL grades, CBSSports.com. They go with the Browns, and they give the Browns a B- for that performance against the Chargers. Back-breaking mistakes overshadowed a huge day by Nick Chubb, who rushed for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 17 carries. It also delineates the struggles of Cade York, which the special teams, Chester Rogers did a much better job, I thought, in the return game, but we expect a little bit more from Cade York, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we built him up and sort of turned him into a cult hero here in Cleveland before he had even really played a game. So maybe it's time to dial that back a little bit and see how he does. He needs to get down to that stadium and practice down there a little bit more. That's one thing I would be doing. We'll find out a little bit more about that as the week goes along. But the weather hasn't even been bad yet. So, if he's doing that now, let's see what happens when it gets really windy and really crazy down there, because he's got to learn how to play the wind. He's got to learn how to play the wind and the weather coming up. And, ideally, you don't want him to have to be kicking 54-yard field goals if you can avoid it. If you can keep them in the 40s, that would be a lot better. He needs to do better.
Yep, without question. All right, before we head to a break, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason about the Browns defense.
Hello, this is Uncle John from Sandusky. I'm sitting here watching G. Bush's comments after this last loss. He's keeping it all the way 100. But he asked the question, what coach we had that has heart from back in the day? And I still say we need Greg Williams as defensive coordinator, plain and simple, because our players are just playing. They're not playing with any heart, and it's getting to be old as hell. I suggest if they can get Greg Williams next year, no matter what it takes with this defense, with what we have, but our talent, we need.
Love all the voicemails. I would pass on Greg Williams. Maybe we need to see a little bit more fire, but Greg Williams kind of wears thin at the professional level pretty quickly on professional athletes.
Well, I mean, you have to consider, the regime that you're talking about, and that's not a fit. I mean, it's just not a fit. So, Greg is old school. This is an analytics front office and coaching staff. I don't know that there's much history at all between Greg and Kevin Stefanski. I'm not feeling it. I'm not seeing it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And here's the thing about analytics, and people argue about it. This is like $1 billion industry now. When you make decisions based on data. That's all analytics is. I mean, that's what analytics is. Decisions based on data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is what it is. And, it's the same thing that they do in baseball. and other sports. I mean, it's just, what works traditionally in this situation and what doesn't. It's why you have the John Harbaughs and the Kevin Stefanskis and the Brandon Staley's going for it on fourth down in a lot of situations. And, that's what it is now. They're playing the numbers game, and that's perfectly fine. I think that, there's a huge place in football for all of the analytics, and there's also a huge place for old school, getting your eyeballs on things or going with a gut feeling and just seeing how it's going to go. So, it's a marriage of the two things.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll look ahead a little bit more towards the Patriots coming into town on Sunday. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi, this is Ron from Clayton, Ohio. Big Browns fan, love your show. I just read something, and I don't know, see what you guys think. They were talking about how terrible Russell Wilson is looking on his new team, the Denver Broncos. And then they said, should Cleveland be worried about Watson coming from the Texans? And I kind of don't think it's even the same argument. The Cleveland Browns are stacked, and I think they got the team together, then went after the quarterback, where Denver went out and got the quarterback and has nothing around him. But, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? As always, go Browns, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I mentioned I was a little concerned about that. More from the standpoint, Deshaun Watson hasn't played in an NFL regular season game in 2 years, basically, by the time he hits the field.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting what he is capable of getting back out on that field for all of that time. It's a lot different absorbing the hits. What he's going to have to deal with in the final 6 weeks that he didn't have to deal with a lot in Houston was weather. He's going to have some weather pain that he's going to have to contend with, the wind, the ice, and the snow, and the rain, and all of that. Not just here in Cleveland, but in some of the other places that he will be playing over those final 6 weeks. So, these are all things to consider. And, it might take a little while to get some of the timing down. But, the Browns are counting on him just stepping in there and being the 3 or 4 time Pro Bowler that he is, and hoping that he can salvage this season.
All right, so ESPN Power Rankings, they have the Browns ranked 18th currently, a 35.6% chance to make the playoffs, 16% chance to win the division, and the footnote there, playoff hopes could be dashed before Watson returns. And Mary Kay, I think that's the reason you're seeing Andrew Berry in the front office operate with a little bit of a sense of an urgency, going out and getting Deion Jones, signing a nose tackle, because there's a big bump coming at quarterback when he comes back and is playing the way they expect him to play.
Yeah, I felt all along that you were going to have to hand Deshaun Watson at least 5 or 6 victories to have a chance to make the playoffs. And really, if you only hand him 5, then he's going to have to go 5-1 probably to really have that shot to make the playoffs. So, that's a tall order. That means the Browns right now have to win. Jacoby Brissett has to win 3 out of his final 6 here. He's got to go 3-3. And again, they're playing some of the toughest teams in the NFL in this stretch. It's certainly not going to be easy. It can be done, but they have to start really winning some games. That one, there's some that got away. And now they have to win some that nobody thought they were going to win. That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to go out and grab 2 to make up for the Jets and the Falcons and keep this team in the hunt.
Yep. Without question. All right, so some news about the Patriots. Damian Harris, their running back, is out, will not play. Having said that, Ramondre Stevenson will play, and that's a guy that ran for 161 yards, 25 carries, and as we mentioned a little bit ago, Bill Belichick has no problem continuing to run the exact same play as long as it's effective.
Yeah, 161 yards by Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, my goodness. If you've got the Ecklers and the Stevensons running for that on you, you are in some kind of trouble. And again, Bill Belichick is going to be dialing it up and making the Browns prove that they can stop it. And, it's really prove it time. I think that Jadeveon, like I said, he should feel a lot better. All those guys up front should feel better, and they're going to have to know that the run is coming on Sunday.
So what are some of the keys? It could be third-string quarterback Bailey Zappi again. Mac Jones not ruled out yet. Brian Hoyer, concussion protocol. They won against the Lions with a third-string quarterback. So what are some of the keys here for the Browns?
Wow. It is amazing that, that they won that game with a rookie quarterback in Bailey Zappi. And I know Mac Jones is trying everything that he possibly can to get back out on that football field. But the keys obviously now, number one, will be to stop the run. Number two, it will be to continue to possess the ball and run like the wind with Nick Chubb. Then Jacoby Brissett has got to tighten it up and not throw any picks. They've got to win the turnover battle. They're 0-3 when they don't win the turnover battle this year. That's got to stop. They've got to get their hands on some footballs. They've got to strip some. They've got to bat some and make some of those big defensive plays. And then Cade York has got to step up and make those kicks.
When you look at the way that the Browns have played, how concerned is it fair? Let me put it this way. Is it fair to say the Patriots defense is going to be the best run defense they'll have seen thus far?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And, that's going to make it tough on them because obviously that's been the Browns' bread and butter. But, they're working right now on ways to minimize Nick Chubb because that's what Bill Belichick does. He'll circle a couple of guys. They know they're going to have to minimize Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb, and Amari Cooper for the most part. And if he feels like he can take those three guys, not necessarily out of the game, but not let them take over and wreck the game, then I think he'll probably feel like he has a good chance to win the game. So that's what he's cooking up right now.
And then it's incumbent on the Browns' other guys to kind of step up and make the plays necessary.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think your big name guys have to step up in moments like these. Now, unfortunately for the Browns, they might not have Denzel Ward this game. You hate to be without anybody, but you for sure hate to be without your Pro Bowlers. But I still think the other bigger name guys are going to have to step up and start making some really big plays. So even though Myles is not feeling himself, he's got to do some pretty amazing things over the next couple of weeks to help this team win some football games. And again, he's playing with a shoulder injury, he's playing with a biceps, but if you're out there, you've got to be making a difference, and that's what he has to do this game. Same thing with Jadeveon and some of the other guys.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot. Make sure you read her pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report. Straight ahead, we're talking Browns. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
Sports for CLE continues. We continue talking Browns. Let's head to the voicemail of truth and reason. This one about where the Browns sit this year.
Hey, Voice of Truth and Reason. This is Mike in Colorado. I just want to talk about our defense. We were duped from the beginning. I don't know how, to believe that we had a top 5 defense going into this year. This is nowhere near a top 5 defense. I'm not even too sure where it would rank, but it's nothing near the top. So we got to quit believing that for one thing. And then Jacoby Brissett, he's a ball protector. He doesn't throw many interceptions, but boy, his timing on interceptions are not good. He has been having a good year. I will give him that, but he needs to settle down here at the end of games and not throw those picks when they really count. Thank you. Goodbye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. A couple of things in there, Fred. First of all, the defense. Any way you describe it, it's been a disappointment. Can they recover?
Well, sure, they can recover. About this time last year, and thanks for having me, Dave. They gave up 47 to the Chargers in that shootout, and then followed that up at home, gave up 37, and got blown out by the Cardinals. And then they kind of went on a streak where the final 11 games, they had the one blow up against the Patriots, but the rest of the season, in fact, to the final 11 games, they held their opponents to 16 or less points in 7 of those games. And what's frustrating, I think, to everybody is they had 9 of the 11 starters returning that were in prominent positions. The 2 defensive tackles, they led us to believe that they didn't play that well and they could replace them with the young guys. Well, I don't think Malik McDowell, Malik Jackson did play very well, but I don't think Jordan Elliott or Taven Bryan or Tommy Togiai or, Perion Winfrey, any of those guys have played any better. And then you lose Anthony Walker. That was kind of a big blow. I think that they did not appreciate him as much as maybe what he did last year, because they let him go in free agency. He signed a 1-year deal, kind of come back on a minimum type deal, because they were really planning on turning over to Jacob Phillips. And when Walker went down, it just seems like the running defense is totally evaporated. So I think that's what everybody's so discouraged about, because last year the offense couldn't score more than 20 points, and that's why they lost week after week. The defense was keeping them in games. This year, the defense cannot make a stop when they need it, and then the last 2 weeks, teams are running all over them. And, there's leaks springing up everywhere on that defensive side of the ball.
So the second part of that voicemail was about Jacoby Brissett. This past week, offensive rush attempts 31 for the Browns, offensive passing attempts 34. It was a 50-50 split in the week prior to that in the loss to the Falcons. Is Kevin Stefanski asking Jacoby Brissett to do too much, do you think?
I don't think he's asking him to do too much. The problem is when the defense can't keep a lead, then they end up in those positions where Brissett has to move the team to win the game at the end. And, you think of the Jets game, there's no reason he needed to be in that position. And the Falcons game, and even against the Chargers. Think about it, it was early, but they jumped up to a 14-0 lead, and they let the Chargers right back in the game before you could even, say what's going on. And when you look at the whole picture there, I think Brissett is playing way better than I expected him to play. I was on the record saying, wait until you know what Deshaun Watson's suspension is with Baker Mayfield. He would be a better option. You have him under contract than to trade him and then possibly be without Watson for most or all the season. Well, they traded Mayfield, and it's turned out Brissett has played way better than I expected. He's ranked by some, I think ESPN has him in the top 10. He's a backup quarterback, but he's playing very well in this system. But obviously, my problem with Mayfield in the past was he could never get the team in position to win the game at the end of the game. And Brissett, we've seen, he did it against the Panthers, but he's thrown 3 interceptions this year, and all of them been on the final or near final drive of the game. And, and it's just, that might be asking much of him, but I don't think he should have been put in that position to begin with. And it is what it is. I think he's exceeded expectations. I think it's all on the defense. I pinned this season through 5 games, all on the defense. Joe Woods, the players, that's where the problem is. I mean, they're scoring, the Browns were scoring 26-27 a game average. They were tied for 6th in the NFL going into last week. I haven't seen this week, but they came out, and even had more points. 28 points should win you games in the NFL.
Yeah, and I agree with you. To your point, Brissett has played better than I thought as well. All right, the defense, we agree. That's been the problem. What do you think the biggest problem that you've seen from the defense is?
Well, when the Falcons decided to just run the ball, that was just will. They just said, we're going to run the ball right down your throat, and we're going to do it with a guy we just got off the practice squad that many people didn't even know who he was. And they went 10 plays, 75 yards, touchdown, never even threw the ball. And the rest of that game, they dominated on the ground pretty much. Well, then the Chargers came in with the worst, rushing offense in the NFL. Now, granted, they had the best passing offense, and they might not have needed to run, but they saw that Falcons game, and they just ran the ball right down, again, the throat of the Browns, 238 yards. And if you can't stop the run, that leads to everything. The Browns are the example of running the ball. And like I said, they're putting on points. They're staying within their deal, but the defense is not holding up their end of the bargain. So, when you look at it, I think it's a combination of things. I think some of them are out of alignment. They talked about miscommunication in the secondary. I think now you got, a new leak on the defensive line. We've seen them do well in the past. We might not have seen these guys, but it seemed like Malik Jackson, McDowell did well enough on the inside. The Browns last year gave up 109 a game. Right now they're giving up like 138 a game. So I think the move they made today, they got Tyler Davison, a veteran defensive tackle who used to be, run stopper in front of Deion Jones. And they picked up Pro Bowl linebacker Deion Jones. Now he's been injured, but those 2 guys tell you what you need to know, that they need somebody that can plug up the middle and somebody that can go get the ball carrier.
Scheme or players? Is that, I guess that's the big question. Is it the scheme? Is it the players? Are the players, you mentioned miscommunication and alignment. Are there guys just trying to make a play instead of the play that's needed to be made?
I think it's both. I mean, when they played the Falcons, they were missing 3 of the 4 starting defensive linemen. And you thought, okay, and give them a little pass. You had all these rookies or second, third year guys. But then you get Clowney, Garrett, Taven Bryan back, and you give up more yards, 238. So Garrett talked about not being in the right places. Some of the guys, misalignment. I just think it's all the way across the board. And like I said before, I think Anthony Walker was covering a lot of the sin, so to say, eating up, tackles. We didn't really see this run defense break down this bad when he was playing. And so Jacob Phillips, has been in there. I've heard some things say that him and JOK kind of overrun sometimes, and maybe they get beyond, and teams are able to cut back on them because they over pursued. I don't know all the technical details, but when you look at you're just seeing 7 yards a game. In the fourth quarter, the Browns are giving up more yards than any team in the NFL, and as well as, in points and across the board. They're just not finishing games, and that's what's very frustrating to everybody.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. Fred mentioned our new linebacker. We'll talk a little bit more about him as well as some other guys the Browns might be looking at. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, Cleveland is known as Brownstown, with fans talking about Browns football all year long. This all started under the leadership of Paul Brown, who took average players, with the exception of Jim Brown, who was an instant superstar, but a team of average players who loved the game of football, worked hard at their craft, molded together as a team, and won many championships. Then came Art Modell, who was lucky to have teams of Brian Sipe and Bernie Kosar, who kept the fan base interest high until he sold the team away. Then Jimmy Haslam arrived, and he sprinkled in false hope by acquiring the likes of Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, all which have failed. Now we have a roster and coaching staff that looks great on paper, but in reality, the defense and special teams that cannot play fundamental football, and the coaching staff who are unable to scheme or coach these players to play fundamental football. Luckily, we have an offense with a great line and great running backs, and now our hope is on Deshaun Watson's return. So my question is, if Deshaun Watson cannot lead this team to a Super Bowl, well, as the saying goes, the final nail in the coffin, will the fan base leave and convert over to the Guardians and Cavs, who have average players who play the game with passion, and which I believe will result in a championship very soon?
All right, as always, appreciate all the voicemails. Fred, I want to see what the offense looks like with Deshaun Watson, because it's looked pretty good with Jacoby Brissett, and I want to see what Kevin Stefanski's offense looks like with an elite-type quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard when he does come back, that they could be done by the time after 11 games. That's why this juncture's so critical. I feel like they had to come out of this 4-game stretch at least 2-2. They're 0-1, so you have 3 more tough games. The Patriots took it to them last year. You talk about a team that runs the ball, and the Browns could not stop the run last year, and Stevenson just ran them, over, and he just coming off a game where I think he had 141, 160 yards. He's got to be licking his chops. Then you have the 2 games with the Ravens and the Bengals. So they got some games that they have to stay alive, or it'll be a moot point by the time Watson comes back. I also think by that time he wouldn't have played in almost 2 years. It's hard to think that he's going to immediately, step in and not be rusty. But with that said, David, I said earlier, I think Jacoby Brissett has exceeded my expectations. This team has lost 3 games by 6 points. And I believe that Watson, if he would have, been able to practice and play in preseason and just start the season like normal, they would have won, at least 2 of those 3 games, because I think he's that much more explosive in putting points on the board. In other words, they played the Jets. They're ahead 30-17. We know what happens. But I think if Watson's playing, they're ahead at least 37-17 in that point. And the Falcons down there in that dome, you lose by 3 points. I think they'd have put up more points as well, and even last week. So take your pick. I think they'd been probably 4-1, 3-2 at the worst, with him playing. But with that all being said, who knows what's going to happen. There's 2 things in football. Very simple. Who can run the ball and who can stop the run. The Browns can run the ball, but they cannot stop the run. Until they get that fixed, they're going to, just be middle of the road, middle of the pack. So that's why I think, all hands on deck to figure that out. I talked to Martin Emerson, or we as a group did on Monday, and he said, and I think he's a rookie and had some good insight. He said tackling and stopping the run is really about want to and will to. We all play, if we played football in junior high, high school, it really is. Do you want to stick your head in there, make the play, or don't you? And I think they were crowned a great defense, and they've been embarrassed, but it doesn't seem to really have done anything to shake them up and right the ship. I thought after the Jets, and they did in the second half against the Steelers, but then the Falcons game comes up, and then the Chargers come up, and the defense is just either these guys are just overpaid because they got a lot of Pro Bowl, big money making players, but they are definitely underperforming. So I think it's on the coaching staff as well as the players to figure out, how to buckle down this run defense.
So they added, the defensive tackle, Davison, who they expect, he signed him to the practice squad. They expect he'll be elevated, as well as Deion Jones. Do those 2 help? Is that a step in the right direction towards getting the run defense fixed?
It can't hurt. I mean, they had a lot of expectations for Jordan Elliott, and I've seen some spots, but I was looking at the grades, and I know they look at the analytics from PFF. And if I'm not mistaken, I think, Elliott and I think, who is it? Togi. Two of them were right at the bottom of the list. And Brian had been the best one, but he's, hasn't been really that great to begin with. And so I just think they need more bodies in there. I've been saying all along, there's some veterans out there like Sheldon Richardson, Ndamukong Suh, and Tyler Davison, has played last year for the Falcons. So he's a veteran, can step in, a little younger than those guys. So I think he's probably, an immediate fix or help to get right in there and eat up some blockers and not get blown off the ball like some of these guys have. I mean, our guys that do film study at the OBR.com, show in their studies how the Browns guys are getting blown off the ball up there. And so I think he'll help. And I think Deion Jones, I just don't know if he's ready to go. He's been on injury reserve for the first 5 weeks. He could be activated because he's sat out 4 games. And so I think he would be an upgrade over Jacob Phillips and Anthony Walker, to be honest. He's got more credentials. I know his play has dropped off to not Pro Bowl level in the last couple years, but he has it in him. So, yeah, I think they need everything they can get. Hopefully those guys can shore it up.
All right, this is from The Athletic. Power rankings and trade ideas. This one for the Browns. Browns are ranked 13th overall, up 3 spots even though they lost. Trade idea is Marquise Haynes from the Panthers. See, they mentioned the acquisition of Deion Sanders with Jones rather, with the trade or the firing of Matt Rule. There's some thought that the Panthers might be trading some folks. Is Haynes a guy, defensive end, not a tackle, but an end? Is he somebody you think can help as well?
Well, I think Andrew Berry, scours those type things. And, this Deion Jones move looks really good to me. It's very low risk. You give up a 6th round in 2024. You traded and you get their 7th round and Jones. So the salary was the big thing. He was the highest paid guy in the Falcons, and they were trying to move him, but they were able to restructure it, the Falcons. And so the Browns really don't have a big commitment other than about $1 million to him. So, hey, if he has a big year when he gets here, they could extend him and have a guy for the future. I know there's another one on the Panthers, Derek Brown. He was like 7th overall pick a couple years ago. It might be too high of a cost, but if they're in fire sale mode, you want to kick the tires and try wherever you can. Because I don't think they've really, in the 3 years Andrew Berry's been here, they really have not seemed to take the interior defensive line as a high priority. They had Sheldon Richardson. He was still under contract. They let him go in a salary dump. They've signed a couple one-year guys like Malik Jackson, who was 32 years old, and Malik McDowell off the street. And then they've drafted one guy each year, a 3rd-round pick on Elliott, a 4th-round pick on Togiai, and a 4th-round pick on Winfrey. But none of those guys really look like, they're the answer. And so I just know they don't seem to prioritize interior defensive line, but it would appear to me that it's hurting them because that's what teams are attacking. And so hopefully, some of these additions, if they can bring in some more help. And I agree, if you can get a veteran defensive end, that would help because you can't count. Jadeveon Clowney continually seems to get hurt. And I know Isaac Rochelle, he's a veteran. He played the other day, and he actually graded higher than Garrett and Clowney in the charts I looked at. So, yeah, if you could get the more the merrier, like I said before. I'd do everything you can because the offense looks like it's in pretty good shape. You gotta put your finger in some holes on the defense, or you're going to be out of contention before you even get started.
Fred Greetham and I are going to take one more time out. Other side of the break, we will take a look specifically at the Patriots game coming up. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico, and I'm just calling in to rant a little bit. Stefanski needs to become a leader of the entire team. What is the point of having AVP there if he's not going to let him call plays? In my opinion, Stefanski needs to delegate offensive duties to Alex Van Pelt and fire Joe Woods immediately. Obviously, if we fans can see that the defensive players are playing with little to no motivation, then it's time for a new voice. I'm tired of hearing the same old excuses of this is unacceptable and we're going to hold people accountable or we're going to try and fix it. It's time for Stefanski to show that he's the real leader and finally truly hold somebody accountable by firing Joe Woods. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Fred, the fan base is angry, passionate. Let's look ahead to the Patriots. Belichick is a guy that, if the Browns don't fix that run defense, he may run it 30 times before he throws it.
Well, especially if the rookie quarterback the formula worked last week. I mean, they played good defense, good special teams, had scores, and limited the number of times that Zappe had to throw the ball. Mac Jones, it's hard for me to believe that he'd be back after missing just like one game with a high ankle or even 2 games, but he could play. But it could work to their advantage to have the rookie, because they'll just run the ball and make the Browns stop them. And they play good defense. So the Browns are going to have to, this is probably the toughest defense the Browns will have faced, in the first 5 games. I think the Patriots have the best defense. And they have the best special teams as well. So I think they're going to have their work cut out for them. They're going to have to score points, but they're also going to have to stop the run. If you remember that Stevenson guy, don't even remember his first name. I wasn't that aware of him last year. And he just steamrolled the Browns in that game, 45-7. They just picked them apart. And so I'm sure they're going to look at that film. The Browns defense hasn't shown that they can stop it. And that was the last time. After that, the Browns defense, started to buckle down and played pretty well, but it was almost too late. So they can't afford to do that. They got to come out and they got to pull it all together this week and figure out a way to win a game.
Yeah,
as far as the guys coaching, I don't know who would replace Joe Woods. They don't really have a guy on the staff. I mean, they have Jeff Howard, defensive back coach, and Ben Bloom, but none of them, I don't think, have ever been NFL coordinator. Alex Van Pelt, I would think that he'd be ready to take over his 3rd year in the system. I do think Stefanski could then maybe look at the bigger picture instead of worrying about the next play. But he has done very well. I mean, the offense, is not the problem. Like, they're putting up 27, 28 points a game. So it is on the defense. But if you can tell me firing Joe Woods is the answer, then I'm all for it. But you got to have, a solution. You can't just fire somebody to fire somebody. This group seems to be very long suffering, and I would say if they make any move, it'll be at the end of the season, not in the middle of the season.
I know it's only week 6. Is this a must-win game? I mean, you've got the Ravens and the Bengals coming up. If you don't get this one, you're 2-4. I mean, is this? And I know it's week 6 again, but this seems awfully close to a must-win game if they plan on making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you had this hand dealt when you knew that Watson was going to get 11-game suspension. I felt like the worst they could do is 5-6 to have a chance. And now, you are in the position where I broke it down the first 4 games. Sure, you should have done better in 2-2. Well, in these 4 games, if you can come out of it 2-2, I would think that would be a win. You'd be 4-4, and then you have 3 games before he's able to come back. You win 2 out of 3, you're 6-5. You win 1 out of 3, you're 5-6. And so the biggest question is, if the bright side, I guess you can look at it this: none of these teams are overwhelming, powerful that they play the next 3 weeks. You got the Patriots, you got the Ravens on the road, and then the Bengals at home. I would rather, if I was going to go 2-2, win the Ravens and the Bengals game, because those are AFC North games. And right now the Browns are 1-0 in the AFC North. And to me, their quickest path to the playoffs is win the division. If you win 4 or more of your division games, odds are 86% say in the last 15 years that you'll win the division. So that's the emphasis. But sure, you need to win some of these other games. You now have lost the tiebreaker with the Chargers. And if you lose the Patriots, you'll lose the tiebreaker with them. So these are all important AFC games. So ideally, you want to win 2 of the next 3. But I don't know. I mean, the way the NFL goes, a lot of people, if you look at the schedule, I'm sure, Dave, most of the people looked at the schedule and had the Chargers as a loss to begin with. but because they were there and had a chance, gift wrap to them to win the game at the end, that's what makes it so hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. You never know how a team is going to be. And the Patriots, quite frankly, don't look as good as we thought they might be at the beginning of the year. Fred Greetham, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Fred Greetham, make sure you read him. Senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.